It was supposed to be just another afternoon in the life of Richard Langford, a man who had everything money could buy, except peace. But that day, as he stood by his mansion's tall windows and watched his black housekeeper, Grace, leave early with her 2 small children, something tugged at his conscience. She'd told him her daughter was sick, but there was a look in her eyes, something heavier than worry, something she wasn't saying. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. He had never cared much for the lives of those who worked for him, but that day, curiosity or maybe guilt made him follow her. Quietly, he slipped into his car, driving a few paces behind her battered old sedan as it made its way from the marble-lined streets of his neighborhood to the worn, forgotten edges of the city. The air outside grew thicker, darker, filled with the hum of broken neon lights and the echo of forgotten dreams. Grace parked beside a cracked brick building, a shelter. Richard's brows furrowed. He watched as her 2 children clung to her hands, their clothes clean but worn thin. She smiled at them, a fragile, brave smile that seemed to hold the entire world together. He waited, expecting her to enter the building, but she didn't. Instead, Grace led her children around the corner, behind the shelter, where a small group of people sat on the ground, homeless, cold, hungry. Then Richard saw it. Grace reached into her old purse and pulled out a lunchbox, the same one he'd seen her carrying every day. Only this time, she wasn't eating from it. She was sharing it. Spoonful by spoonful, she fed the strangers around her. Her little boy, no more than 7, offered a piece of bread to an old man with shaking hands. Her daughter placed a cookie, likely her only one, into another woman's palm. Richard's throat tightened. Grace hadn't been leaving early because her daughter was sick. She'd been leaving to feed people who had less than her. For a long moment, he couldn't move. The billionaire who'd prided himself on control, on logic, on profit now sat in his expensive car. His hands trembling on the steering wheel. He remembered all the times he'd walked past those same people without a glance. All the times he'd told himself charity was for someone else. And now, here was Grace, a woman who earned less in a year than what he spent on a single dinner, giving everything she had that night. Richard couldn't sleep. Her image haunted him, her bent back, her soft voice, her children's laughter in the cold. The next morning, he asked her to come to his office. Grace entered nervously, her hands clasped, unsure what she'd done wrong. "Grace," he said softly, "where were you yesterday?" She hesitated, then looked down. "At the shelter, sir. I go there when I can. They're good people, just struggling. I try to help, even when you don't have enough yourself." He asked. Grace's voice broke slightly. "Sir, when you've known hunger, you can't stand watching someone else go through it." Something inside him shattered. He stood, walked to the window, the same one from which he had first seen her leave, but this time it reflected a different man. Not the billionaire, not the master, just a human being who'd finally seen what wealth was supposed to mean. By noon, trucks arrived at the shelter, blankets, food, and enough supplies to last months. Grace watched, stunned, as Richard himself helped unload boxes. The crowd whispered his name in disbelief. When he turned to her, his eyes glistened. "Grace, I didn't follow you because I didn't trust you. I followed you because I wanted to understand why you still smiled every day." She smiled faintly, tears glimmering. "Because, so, when life gives you nothing, kindness is the only thing you can still afford." And right there, the billionaire wept. Not out of pity, but because, for the first time, he felt poor. From that day, Richard funded a permanent community center in Grace's neighborhood, naming it Hope House. He made her its director, and every Sunday, without fail, he'd show up to serve food beside her children the same way she once had. Because kindness doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back. And sometimes, it takes following someone humble to remember how to be human again. Branded Otri. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with someone who believes kindness still matters. Subscribe to Cinematic Whispers, where every story reminds us that humanity is our greatest fortune.